everyone, I'm Betsy.
And I'm Greg.
And we want to invite you to check out our podcast, Going on 30.
Each month, Betsy and I take a look back at a movie that was released 30 years ago that was either nominated or should have been nominated for Best Picture.
We talk about the legacy of the film, choose the best scenes and performances, and explore our own hot takes about the movie.
And we discuss the greatness of Tom Cruise, an actor who has graced our screens for multiple decades, taking on some of the most artistically challenging pursuits while displaying what can only be described as an everyman relatability. An actor, nay, a thespian, who pushes the boundaries of what the medium is capable of while revealing the humanity that's underlying.
All right, I'm done. I cannot tolerate this anymore. So listen to Going on 30 every month right here on the Popping Collars feed, wherever you get your podcasts.
I love you, Tom!
Oh, jeez.
Smoke, smoke, like a meteor, I'll glow, glow, glow. Well, I'll release her from the...
Hi, I'm Greg Knight.
Hey, I'm Ryan Parker.
And this is PCTV, a Popping Collars side project where we randomly select a current TV show that you should be streaming right now. Ryan and I have each picked 6 shows apiece from the top streaming apps, and this month we're talking about the Disney Plus series Echo.
Maya. I see everything that you are. I always have. Don't be afraid. You have so much pain in you. So much rage. That you can't contain it. You and I are the same. So, who's the monster?
You know, I wrote this paragraph to start off our show like a long time ago. It just occurred to me that Disney Plus may not be one of the top 6 streaming apps anymore. I'm not sure at this point.
It feels like they're like the NBA Western Conference. It's just always shifting.
Yeah. They're the Minnesota Timberwolves. They're not the Minnesota Timberwolves this year. They're
like 3 through 6 is just in constant flux, you know? You know what this show is making me realize? That there just aren't any rules anymore.
Right, exactly.
Nothing has to be a certain way. You don't need 6 episodes. Let's just do 5.
Right, yeah.
They don't have to be 42 minutes. One can be 36.
Yeah.
Another can be 50. It doesn't matter.
When it comes to Emmys and stuff, it was always like dramas are an hour, comedies are 30 minutes. And that's just, none of that is true anymore, you know?
We can come back to that in Industry Corner. I'm jumping in.
A brief description of this show. Would you like to hear it?
I would love it.
Maya Lopez must face her past, reconnect with her Native American roots, and embrace the meaning of family and community if she ever hopes to move forward.
Yeah, I think even Disney Plus description writers are tired of, they have superhero fatigue.
That's right. That's right. Ryan, why did you pick Echo as our show?
Did I pick this?
You did.
God, I have no idea. No, I picked it because it was new, and we had watched a few shows that had kind of been they were kind of a few years old.
Yeah.
And that's fine too. But this was new. I had seen some folks talking about it online, on Twitter or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, well, let's just give this a shot.
Yeah.
Female lead, Native American context.
A lot of Reservation Dogs crossover. A show that we loved as far as the actors.
Yes. Yeah. So I think that's why. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So what's your take on the show? That's my why. I have now I have take 12, but what's your take?
Yeah, I feel like we can probably get through this show discussion pretty quickly because I really don't. It's not even that I have a negative take on the show or a positive take. I just don't really have a whole lot of a take at all on the show. It was fine, I guess. It's the word that I would give it. I think that there's probably a really good show, like buried in the midst of a lot of what feels like corporate, influence. Like there's no reason for Daredevil to show up in this show at all, except that Disney's like, oh my God, we need Daredevil in this. It's like, come on, get out of here. I think that there's probably like a really good short, if they went the way of like Werewolf by Night, which they did last year, which I thought was really good with Garcia Bernal, Gael Garcia Bernal. It's just kind of there, it's fine, but nothing really stood out to me over the course of the show.
I agree with you, and there's nothing negative, but there's nothing overwhelming. I felt like good performances.
Yeah.
Well produced. A couple of set pieces, I'll come to this in a second, that I think work really well. Always like a character with a different ability. So her being deaf,
mm-hmm.
And signing. I think signing is a beautiful language, and also I'm sensitive to. My wife has hearing issues, so always sensitive to portrayal of characters like that. But yeah, I agree with you. I think the Daredevil thing is obviously a nod to Kingpin's eventual run for mayor.
Mm-hmm.
And it does kind of set a timeline for people who really pay attention to that stuff. I kind of take it or leave it. But I agree with you. There's something here, and I think that something would have been better served in a 90-minute movie, quite frankly.
Yeah. I think that's right.
Have Daredevil be kind of the B superhero in that context, because you kind of have everything that Marvel movies have. Right. And you're only tipping. You could have easily cut. I know you could for sure easily cut an hour out of what we saw and have a perfect fine 2.5 to 3 hour superhero film. But because it has the origin story of the people, right, which I thought was quite well done. The Choctaw Nation, the origin story there, and it kind of similar a little bit to the opening of Black Panther. Right. Just maybe a little, obviously less animation going on there, but
you represent your people. That means Chakta Tushka.
Generations are echoing, reaching out to us.
I thought it could have been not even just perfectly fine. It could have been a good film. So I don't know why you need the series. So again, it's not. I don't really have any negative reaction to it. I was like, okay, that's 3.5, 4 hours of my life. But there's not a lot that I pulled out of. I mean, well, let's come back. We'll come back to Theology Corner in a second.
Yeah.
So how about your best scene, sequence, episode, or storyline?
Well,
it's gonna be tough because it's kind of thin.
No, you touched on what the story is for me. So I was actually, as you were talking, I was looking up on IMDb who was the showrunner for this show, It looks like Marion Dare. I don't know how to say her name, but she seems to be the head writer. And then the series is directed by, has two directors, Sidney Freeland and Catriona McKenzie.
Okay.
So I'm not sure who the showrunner is of this. I'm guessing that it's the head writer of the series is who probably had the vision for this. You know, it strikes me that episode 4 probably gets the closest to what she probably had in mind, which is exactly what you were talking about. It's this idea of ancestry, legacy, and parentage. And like,
Yes.
who are you and how are you made up of the people that came before you? So the
Yes.
way that this show like comes to the conclusion that, you know, Maya is an echo, hence her name, right, of her ancestors, but she's also an echo of the kingpin who raised her, right? So she's this warrior, you know, who has existed throughout the ages, but she's also this she's also influenced by this tyrant.
To your final lesson.
Final?
Yes. Well, we'll still have our Sunday evening dinners, but your tutelage has come to an end. You're ready
For what?
to move from the theoretical to the practical. You and I, we are the only ones we can trust. That's your final lesson. You're dismissed.
And all of that kind of mixes into who she is, and that is an intriguing prospect for a story. The problem is that I don't think it's a sellable story, and so I can totally understand why Disney wanted to junk it up with a lot of stuff. But but for me, yeah, it's that episode 4 is the one that kind of goes into that of like, who is she? Is she a product of Choctaw Nation, or is she a product of Kingpin? And the answer is that she's both, right?
Yeah. So. I want to come back to that too in Theology Corner. And I appreciate that because you're shedding light onto something that I hadn't quite thought about in that way. The best sequence or series, episode, I just felt like anytime, I think whoever was the coordinator for this or the fight choreographer for this was quite good. I thought there were some, speaking of leaning into violence, I thought it was quite well done. The fight choreography, there was some kind of inventive fight sequences and moments within the larger dance, if you will, the skating rink, even episode 1, when that guy went barreling through the door to tackle the guy. I thought that was kind of cool. So yeah, which is unfortunate because there's opportunity for more depth, as you said. And when I watch it, I'm like, oh, well, that was more interesting, maybe visually. And so yeah, I didn't have a ton of takeaway in that regard.
And that first episode has, that's probably that fight that you're talking about, the fight in the speakeasy or whatever it is that,
Daredevil shows up.
Yeah, where Daredevil shows up. That's the one that harkens the most for me back to that Daredevil series from Netflix,
I've been watching them all night. And then you guys show up. And screwed everything up.
The crowning achievement of that series was the hallway fight that Daredevil had in episode 2 or something like that.
Stealing from Old Boy.
Yeah. But yeah, it's sort of that one take, camera swirling around the room kind of choreography. And yeah, I'm with you. ever since that first Daredevil fight, I've always been intrigued by that type of choreography. It feels a little John Wickish. I will say this about the action moving on from that, like the train sequence and some other sequences. I will be so glad when we're not shooting stuff on the volume anymore. It just looks so weird. The
Yeah.
backgrounds just always look so strange
Yeah.
in these sort of, action sequences where the background's projected. And so, yeah, anytime where it felt tangible and real, like the skating rink, like that first room, that was always better, I think.
Let's go favorite performance.
I came for Zahn McClarnon, uh,
Yeah.
because like when he shows up in the first episode, I'm like, oh, great. Because I know that this is one of those weird things, right? Because Echo was set up in the Hawkeye series,
Mhm.
that came out a couple of years ago, and I know that Zahn McClarnon was in the Hawkeye series, and I know that he eventually got killed by Hawkeye. So I was kind of hoping that a lot of our time would be spent, maybe in the present day, but also flashing back to his relationship with Maya and what it was that she learned from her father before she became influenced by Kingpin. And so it was disappointing for me to realize that Zahn McClarnon was not going to be on the show past episode 1. Like, he was just he was gonna kind of set everything up, and that was a little disappointing. So I came for him, hoping that I would get more, but I guess I stayed for Maya, for Alaqua Cox, who plays Maya. She's strong in a way that you really articulated. This idea of like, playing a deaf character. She does this really good job of looking observant of everything that's around her the entire time, which I would expect someone who was like an Echo, right? This superhuman superhero, but also deaf, Native
Yeah.
American. I would expect them to be observant of the world around them, right? So, yeah.
Yeah. She's quite good, and it'll be interesting to see where her career goes after this and non-Echo career.
Yeah.
Because she has a great screen presence. So I don't know that I showed up for anybody, quite frankly, but she is a quite captivating actress. But I also thought Cousin Biscuits was quite fun, and I wish there was a bit more of him too.
Yeah.
Played by Cody Lightning. Also, by the way, great name.
Yeah.
So he's, I haven't seen a ton of. I've seen Smoke Signals. If you haven't seen that from '98, you should check that out. That's a good film. So I would love to see him in some more comedic roles like he was in. I thought he was quite good.
What's your take on the D'Onofrio Kingpin? How do you feel about that?
I like him. I
Yeah.
don't. Yeah. Do you not, or do you have another idea of
I don't
who
know.
that should have been?
I mean, he's making, so, D'Onofrio is kind of like a Nicolas Cage type actor. Like, he makes choices, right? And he has like a very unique affect in what he does with Kingpin. And I could see some people liking it, and I could see some people being turned off by it. So,
Yeah,
was
I
curious.
think you're exactly right. He's had an interesting career because wasn't like in the early 2000s, like, oh, this guy's gonna pop,
Yeah.
and it just never felt like he became the star that like he could have been. Is that because I don't think he's a bad actor. I don't think he doesn't go like Nicolas Rage or anything like that. I mean,
Right.
I think he's a bit more measured in by comparison, but yeah, I remember his earlier films just thinking, okay, this guy's gonna like be a huge star, but that just never really happened. And maybe I was just wrong for even thinking that, but
I mean, he was an indie darling for a long time. But I mean, he would also show up in things, he would show up in the background of like big budget movies. Like, I remember he had like a very small part in JFK, you know. He would kind of like, you would just see Vincent D'Onofrio, but I guess probably Men in Black was the first sort of big budget thing that you would have thought, oh, okay, there's D'Onofrio showing up. And even there, he's doing something weird, you know? It like he always brings something like a little off to the performance.
Do you remember The Cell?
Yes, I love this. I'm a Cell fan.
And
Yeah.
Arson Singh guy, is that what you're saying? What's that guy done lately?
I thought that movie was gorgeous, man. It's so like the colors are off the charts.
I want to rewatch it. Yeah, I want to check it out or revisit it.
Yeah.
And The Cell, The Fall.
Yeah, he's kind of doing like a Brando in The Cell, it feels like, but yeah, you know.
Yeah.
When I was a boy, I had to choose a path, or fate would choose for me. I've hurt people, and I'm going to hurt more.
I'm asking forgiveness for what I'm about to do.
Savages, gang wars. This city crumbles. Maya, we are the only ones we can trust. Betrayal, that's not something that I can forgive. Nothing about this brings me joy. You brought this on yourself. It hurts me. But I have to kill you.
Okay, this is where we go big ideas, and I'm kind of excited.
Yeah, I think this is where most of our conversation is going to be. Yeah.
I want to kick this off. I want to steal your thunder and kind of throw it back to you. So, theology corner for me, I was going to talk about the ancestors and how that theme felt tacked on to me.
Yeah.
And that's a shame because or maybe I'm not smart enough to see where it's at work. But I thought it was so beautiful and important that I think more direct acknowledgement of it would have been appreciated. But I do like this tension, and I want to see if it tracks for you when you talk about who is Maya going to be, or how is Echo going to manifest herself in the tradition of her people or Kingpin. And man, you can really talk about the way that's manifesting itself in the church in America now, where you have a history of pacifism, right, and nonviolence. Mm-hmm. And it is being totally, in many places, it's being totally overtaken by this openness or comfort with violence and the kind of Christian nationalist movement. And, I look at people and I think, and in communities, and think, you're choosing a path. And I think in doing so, you're turning your back on 2,000 years of history. But also we have to reckon with the Crusades and all that thing, I know. But,
I was going to say, there's a violent history.
There's always been a thread. I mean, when I read the life of Jesus, I don't see Kingpin. So.
Right. But it's how it gets justified, right? So think about.
What do you think about that? What do you think about that? Like, what's your take on that?
No, I think that's totally right, because I think you justify the worst influences as long as they keep you in positions of power. So think about the Christian right in America, in our lifetimes. You and I, right? Back in the 80s, you would have Jerry Falwell and Pat Robertson and people like that saying, well, we have to vote for Ronald Reagan because he's the moral choice, in response to who it is that Democrats are running. And then, of course, like after the Clinton sex scandals and stuff like that, that became even more exacerbated. Like that rhetoric became even more heightened, where it was like, no, the office of the presidency requires like the utmost morality. Well, you have the most immoral candidate running for that party now, and he is totally embraced by the Christian right, in Donald Trump, and he's likely going to be a president again, right, on the backs of these people voting for him. There's no morality there, and he doesn't even pretend to be a moral person, and yet, it's justified. The vote is justified because he's the person, one, in your party, but also the person that keeps you in power. And so, yeah, I think that that's totally right. Like, a kingpin makes total sense to me in that, you can probably recognize that this is an abhorrent person, but if he's on your side, you embrace it as if it's Jesus himself,
Well, Kingpin is a profoundly immoral person who is, as the series draws to a close, is going to go run for mayor of New York.
Right.
Right. If there's a theology corner here, I think that's it. I mean, other than the notion of the ancestors, and to maybe speak briefly about the positive element of that and the way it manifests itself, even if it's kind of surface level stuff in the series, but those moments where she has all of those women behind her.
Yeah.
I thought that was, well, really, there was only one moment where that happens in episode 5.
Right.
That I thought was quite good, but also maybe appreciate layering each episode with one different woman. But again, I think all of that could have been done in tighter fashion in a film. And I guess that kind of leads us a little bit to Industry Corner. Like, what do you make of, what does this show say about the state of our entertainment industry?
Well, this is where it is for me. Like, the whole industry conversation is tied into the theology conversation, I feel like, and that's the death of empire, right? I mean, which is what we're seeing with sort of the Marvel system. And some of it is their fault. Like, some of it is because they just don't understand like what their product is or how to sell it. Ultimately, here's the thing about Marvel and Marvel properties. The reason that things are chosen to be made is because they want to sell you toys, right? Like, there's a new book.
Yeah, but I'm not buying an Echo toy.
Well, that's the thing, right? That's why you're not going to see Echoes anymore. That's why Echo got dumped on Disney Plus, because they don't care if you watch it or not, right? In the middle of February, all episodes coming out at the same time. They're just trying to get rid of this thing. What they want you to watch and what they want you to buy are, the boy movies, right? There's a book that came out recently about the Marvel Universe that Joanna Robinson wrote, where she talked to like some of the executives, that worked for Marvel during this sort of run that they had from 2008 up until, I don't know, like, right around the pandemic starting and stuff like that. And the way that they described it was that they were given the charge from Disney to push plastic, right? Push plastic was the charge that they were given, which is this idea of whatever it is that you make sure that there's toys, make sure that there's multiple costumes for these people to wear so that we can sell more toys, so that we can sell more Iron Man items and stuff like that. And that's what's at the heart of it. The story comes second. And I feel like over the course of this spiral that Marvel has been having and Disney has been having, the issue is that they don't understand what their stories are. They just don't know what it is that they're trying to say, is what it feels like to me.
I think what you say makes a lot of sense. And I'm looking up, you just showed, when you mentioned the book, I'm probably going to order this. I read a lot of comics, and I know you have too.
Mm-hmm.
That early reign, if you will, in the early 2000s, felt like whoever was at the wheel understood why we like those comics. There may have been push plastic, sure. Right. And there's a historian, a film historian, who writes about blockbusters and talks about fandom, and he said what a lot of the critics of Star Wars and kind of commercialization and merchandising don't get is we would have made those toys ourselves if we had to, because the stories the universes were so inviting, right?
Yeah.
And I think there's something to that here in the MCU, but it just feels like whoever is at the wheel now doesn't get it. And I don't think it's because we're tired of superheroes. I just don't think the stories are being told the way they should be.
I think there's multiple things happening here. Some of them are Marvel's fault and some of them aren't, right? And one of the things I think you're going to be able to speak to that I'm going to bring up. So the first thing is that they fell into a formula for making these movies that I think worked for a little while, but after you've seen the magic trick like 10, 12 times, like it starts to feel a little less magical, you know what I'm saying? So that's a storytelling, that's a corporate issue a little bit. It's a showrunner producer issue. But the second thing that I think happened to Marvel is that they hit a series of bad luck. One of those things was the pandemic shutting down their sort of movie. They were pumping out movies, like 2-3 movies a year, and they shut down for a full year. And even when they came back, they weren't back at full capacity, and they were releasing stuff out of order based on how COVID was affecting production. And so I think that affected their overall storytelling. I think the rise of Disney Plus and the mandate from Disney to put more Marvel stuff onto their service, I think that diluted the product a little bit. And then finally, and the thing that I think that you're going to be able to speak to, they hit an issue with some of their actors, and I'm thinking specifically of their main actor, Jonathan Majors, playing Kang, where all of a sudden plans that they had for a large overarching story had to be scrapped. And that is an unfortunate part of this business. One of the things that I was thinking of recently was Magazine Dreams coming out, that was going to be a big movie for that up and coming director that was putting that together. And now it is Dunzo and is not his fault.
I saw it.
Yeah. And it's not his fault, and it's not Marvel's fault, but it happened, and it's just like that's the some of those things you can't control.
My thing with Kang is just recast him. Who cares? Everybody knows. All this stuff is, everybody, we live in this state of knowing. I read a book. This is going to get off topic. I mean, we could really do a whole podcast on this book, and we probably should. There's a book called Monsters, and it's by Claire Dieter, and it's basically the central question is, what do we do with art made by monstrous men?
Right.
And it is mostly men. Let's just be honest. And she talks a lot about her favorite filmmaker is Roman Polanski, right? And she's like, what do I do about that? So it has these, and there's no, and she's not giving an easy answer. It's all about, she's talking about criticism and ethics and capitalism and all these kinds of things. And, the fact that we live in this state of knowingness, that we just know things about people that we wouldn't have known 10 years ago.
Right.
And can we, you question, separate the art from the artist? And does my rental of Magazine Dreams benefit Jonathan Majors, or does it benefit the director and the 200 other people that worked on the film? It's a sticky question, and it's it's going to be deeply personal for everybody.
Yeah.
But after reading her book, there's a part of me that's like, release Magazine Dreams in theaters widely. Like, it's a phenomenal film.
Mm-hmm.
The director needs to pick an ending. There's 3 endings, as at least the version I saw at Sundance. But yeah, in terms of the MCU and these issues with cast, just recast it. Tell that overarching. That's why Avengers worked so well. Like, I know they didn't. Like, not everybody that stars in that film is a saint, right? Mm-hmm. Like, if we knew their personal lives, so they stuck with the story and they told it. Now, yeah, COVID was a pain in the ass on production, but tell your story.
Part of what the MCU did which I think can't be understated, because this is a phenomenal achievement on their part. They taught mainstream movie audiences something that comic book readers had known about for years, which is continuity. They taught people how to understand continuity and how things flow from one thing to another. You know, when I was coming up, when I was a kid, comics were always, they were numbered, but they were always very large numbers, So like when I started reading Spider-Man in the 80s or something, he was already in like the 200 issues, something like that. So there was never this idea when I came into the mix, there was never this idea of, oh, we need to restart so that Greg understands where we're coming from, right? It's like, no, Greg needs to catch up. Really, and if he hasn't been reading since the 60s, oh well. Like he needs to learn what the continuity is. And that's kind of what the MCU trained people to do at the movies, which is no small feat. But once that continuity starts to be messed with a little bit, and now it becomes like you're telling like a large multiversal story, but you don't know what the inciting incident was. Was it what Loki did? Was it what Spider-Man did? Was it what Doctor Strange did? We have no idea, That's where you're going to start to lose people, right? Where they're like, wait, I don't know what it is I'm supposed to be watching. Am I supposed to watch Echo? Like that's the problem with what it is that you're producing.
Anything else about Echo?
Yeah, I would just say there's a little bit of theology something. Yeah, there's a little bit of theology something that I just want to give voice to. And I don't quite know how to articulate it, except to say that I was disappointed when Maya started to exhibit supernatural abilities, like magical abilities. I understand that she draws power from her ancestors. Like I love that whole bit. Like I love the idea that like she is inspired and is an echo of what has gone before her. But there was something that felt like, you know what? She's not quite enough as like this badass, deaf fighting warrior. We need to give her some kind of like stuff that she can shoot out of her hands. And it's like, come on, man. Like that felt like a bummer to me. It felt like it was leaning back on a trope. And especially when it came to a minority character, I found it a little offensive that like Maya's not enough on her own. She needs to have some kind of special force that she can shoot at people. And I'm just like, come on. Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That also felt tacked on. Yeah.
Daredevil's not like tapping into some magical force. Does he have heightened senses? Absolutely. But I kind of wanted Echo, I kind of wanted Maya to sort of have that kind of, lean into that kind of power set. But one of these days, you and I will be running Disney or Marvel, and we'll get it all ironed out.
We can have that.
We'll get it all ironed out. Right?
Let's spin the wheel of death and get out of here. Let's see what we got.
I'm going to solve. All right. Cornucopia cabinet.
Okay, Ryan, you're going to be excited. This is a show that we've already seen, and this is one of my picks. So it is my Hulu pick for this year, and we're going back to superheroes, kind of. I've chosen Legion as our Hulu series to talk about.
Okay, we're going in the Wayback Machine.
Yeah, so this is going to be an oldie. Legion showed up on FX way back in the day. All right, so Legion is going to be our next topic. It is yes, it is a superhero show, but it's nothing like what you have come to expect from a superhero show.
I just wouldn't even call it a superhero show, by the way.
You can divorce it from your mind. It's more like the spiritual successor to Twin Peaks is what I would call it.
And it stars Rachel Keller, who I think is fantastic. And she is currently in Tokyo Vice, is in Tokyo Vice, which I'm currently watching on HBO. And I can recommend that to people who are looking for good detective crime.
Awesome. Okay, so Legion will be our next episode. Ryan, thank you for talking Echo with me.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. So when are you starting your run for New York mayor? Are you going to be running against the Kingpin, or?
I'm actually going to run for mayor of Jackson.
There you go.
It's a more vital and difficult job. Believe it or not.
I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait to put one of your yard signs in my front yard. That'll be great. We'll see you next time.
All right.